Yeah, well, hasn't it been a week of bombshells? And it continues out of D.C. A special counsel has been appointed to oversee the investigation into Russian election interference. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller, who was chosen as James Comey's mentor. And what is going on? What do you think is going on in the White House now? It feels kind of like a Three Stooges movie.
Coming out of a coma, slowly coming out of this coma, and we're starting to see the light.
Comey, you mean?
Well, okay, Comey. Okay, Comey. We're coming out of Comey, and we're seeing the light, and things are starting to look like we're going to live. We're going to get through this illness.
Well, and I think that's why he was appointed, Mueller, because there's been this crisis in our country, a crisis of credibility. People don't know what to believe. They don't know who to believe. But this guy was the FBI director for 12 years, serving only longer than J. Edgar Hoover. He was a U.S. attorney in Massachusetts. He was the U.S. attorney of California. He has so much credibility. And I have to tell you, when you look at the order that Rosenstein signed, and I hope people will go online and look at it, not only does he have autonomy and he can press charges himself, he can investigate the Russian coordination, but also also any other matters that may arise directly from the investigation, including crimes like perjury or obstruction of justice. That was put in there intentionally to warn the White House that they are serious. And I thought, finally, our country can feel a bit better.
I feel like the whole move was like a checkmate by Rosenstein.
Yes.
Because when you think about how they tried to blame the whole Comey thing on a letter he drafted, I feel like no one saw this coming. He did the right thing. And for him to, I just wish I could see the faces when he said, you know, finally we're going to do this right, optically and otherwise.
He picks on the wrong people. He picks on the people
he doesn't think about what the breadth of their power before he does.
One thing that concerned me, though, and I wanted to ask you about this, Sonny, because Alan Dershowitz was commenting on this, and my concern is transparency in the process. I don't want to get, at the end of this, I don't want to hear indictment or no indictment and have us not have seen how this transpired. And he was saying that the investigation was going to be in secret. We'll never hear from a witness. At the end, we'll either hear no indictment. So does that concern you at all, that we won't be knowing that at the end we'll get an answer, but we won't actually know how they got to this conclusion or any of the details?
No, you have to wait for the books.
Right, well...
You know, that's how we found out the impeachment with Bill Clinton.
Right.
We heard information, all of that stuff, you know, all that was grand jury and all kind of stuff.
The congressional hearings for Watergate were televised.
Well, there'll be a report at the end of the day, but what people need to understand is these investigations they can be compromised if you put everything out there, because people start changing their stories. They may not want to talk. And so when something is under investigation, you generally always keep it close to the vest so that you can conduct a proper investigation.
Alan knows that.
Yeah.
He knows that.
Professor Dershowitz knows that.
He knows that. He's you know, he's quacking.
He knows that very well.
He's quacking. But you know, the current resident in the White House gave he gave a Coast Guard commencement speech yesterday and took a moment to point out the real victim in all of this. Take a look.
Look at the way I've been treated lately, especially by the media. No politician in history, and I say this with great surety, has been treated worse or more unfairly.
I did want to point out that there have been a couple who have been perhaps treated more unfairly or as unfairly. Let's talk about, I don't know, Barack Obama. And I make this point specifically about this man who for almost 7 years insisted he wasn't an American, didn't have America's best values in mind, because he wasn't born here, that he was a Muslim, that, you know, all propagated by this guy. And so I figure you've been in less than, you've been in maybe, what, 120 days? And you think it's rough now? This guy went through it for 8 years and came out still a man. I'm proud. Whether you like what he did, I'm proud of him. I'm proud of this president.
President Lincoln had half the country secede from the Union.
Tell that to Mary Todd.
So
well,
I don't
but
know
remember, listen, he doesn't know a lot about history, as we know.
But even George George W. Bush. I mean, like, this is a guy who, you know, comedians made fun of him all the time. The media was tough on him. This job is not supposed to be easy. You're supposed to go in there and be challenged. You're the commander-in-chief. You have a very difficult job. You have a lot of power at your fingertips. And he thinks the media is supposed to be his friend. And what I would say, you know, Republicans can make a point about media bias, and as we know, we've had that debate at the table, and I do agree that there is a bias in media, but stop being a crybaby about it. That means you should be able to get out there, articulate your points, and guess what? If there's no scandal to find, they're not going to find a scandal. If there's nothing to find, they won't find it.
The psychology is interesting, because I've noticed that people who are bullies are also victims very often. You notice that? It's like the other side of the coin.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe Vladimir Putin has the same personality.
And also the idea that it drives me crazy that he goes to these events where he's supposed to be paying tribute to other people and makes it about himself.
That's what it's about him.
My commencement speech is supposed to be like inspiring and about how you can do it.
And he's talking about his own
the
media.
money he saved
But you do know
the planes.
He's talking about the, you know, he's messed with their budget.
The Coast Guard budget.
He poofs all over their budget.
Did he cut it by like 12% or more?
He's hoping they know as little as he does when he goes into these things.
This is a guy who could go. This is a guy who could go speak to military people and have no self-awareness. I mean, he just has no self-awareness of the sense that you work for us, not the other way around, but you're there to be inspirational to people. You're not there to complain and moan about the media. You look petty. You stop doing it. Just stop.
But his people who voted for him and who like him, they're okay with that. They like it. They agree with that.
He's preaching to the choir, because didn't we say just this week that 80% of Republicans still support him? And I think, you know, when he's been touting this fake news and witch hunt stuff, people are believing that. And hopefully this special counsel Mueller that narrative.
If people are actually living with this belief, they're doing it knowingly.
You think so?
Yes, because you can't, listen, there are things that are right here that is very clear. When you say the former president of the United States, he bugged me, he bugged my building. And to this moment, we still don't have any proof. When he says this person did that, people see that, and they see that there's no proof, and so they're willingly ignorant, I believe.
Well, somebody this morning said that the enthusiasm in his followers is going down.
And don't believe the polling. Don't believe that polling. I talk to Republicans, I talk to conservatives every day who live in frustration from this man, because they want to be talking about tax policy and health care and real issues, and a lot of them voted for him in confidence that this was a businessman who was going to come in and prioritize these issues, and they're deeply, deeply disappointed in this nonsense.
Their plans for tax reform and for health care are so bad that I hope that they fail at that.
I disagree about that.
Whatever ends up happening, we're going.